I actually did a head-to-head on one particular task that I asked all of the AIs, and I just wanted to see who came up with the best answer for it. Having checked all of them, the one that I loved the most was
Sage CoPilot had a little bit of a misbehavior issue.
Everyone is new to this game, and there's going to be a lot of things that need to be trained into the various systems.
Briefcase and Ruben Steenkamp announced last week that they have released what they've said is their most requested feature yet, and it is AI-powered line item extraction.
Vertice, which is a UK-based startup, has raised $50 million in Series C funding to expand its AI-powered platform.
What's really more important about SaaS products and apps that you've got is like making sure that you're maximizing the benefit of what you've got rather than trying to cut back just because you don't understand why you're spending money on a product that does, I don't know, credit control.
Hedgeflows have secured a broader regulatory approval from the FCA.
Xero App Store update, Fin Daily, their push notification dashboard tool, Profit Keeper product that's really great for franchises. Accurise from Australia, which is an analytics application. Briefcase, they've finally launched onto the Xero App Store in the UK. Ship Theory, the cloud-based shipping management tool. Store Hub for retailers and restaurants looking for a cloud POS, ordering, reporting and loyalty program. Tax Style to streamline the processing of managing your corporation tax specifically for the UAE.
Take a breath, John.
I absolutely do not want the FD to be able to post anything. Using some legacy software called Exchequer, it wasn't fit for 2010, never mind the 2020s.
What made you think this is the system that will power the business as it grows?
I always wanted to have a system that did everything rather than be bolting on bits.
Before this gets poo-pooed, it's not necessarily the 40 that's the key.
I'll bring kind of maybe a different slant to this from the private equity world. Why is growth, both top line and EBITDA, important? Well, quite bluntly, they are the things that drive valuation.
So the question was, do we use timesheets? And I think a lot of people would see that we're quite a modern firm and probably don't do timesheets. We do.
And this is the sort of classic innovative dilemma thing. Having processed the shit out of it, then it becomes quite hard to change that process.
I think there's always this tendency of, yeah, we should be charging more, yes, we should be making more profit, but for them it's almost like that bit of going, why bother?
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Digi-Tools and Accrual World podcast brought to you by the Digital Disruptors. I am delighted to say that I am back for an episode because I've been on my jollies for a while and Indy and Ryan have been holding the fort, which is very good of them, and so very, very much appreciate that. And unfortunately, this is an episode where it's like one in, one out because Ryan's not feeling very well. So I'm back, Ryan's not. And Indy, you're still holding the fort, so it's all on you, I'm afraid, isn't it?
It really is. I've just had to be super stretched between you and Ryan. I have to admit, it was very nice spending a little bit of alone time with Ryan. I'm not sure how I feel about our alone time, seeing as I have inner deep resentment for the fact that you've just been away on a holiday for an extended period of time. How was it? Did you enjoy your jollies?
Oh, I did enjoy my jollies, yeah. And I guess our alone time's a little bit more exciting than alone time with Ryan, right? Because he's just a giant baby. So, you know.
Would you have a little bit more jokes and banter? I was telling Ryan that I was quite delighted to find out that my tech bath is actually apparently really good for females.
Oh, yes.
And that it's been proven that actually turns out that, the optimal range is between 14 to 16 degrees for women. So that was one thing. I'm still doing a little bit more research on the other stuff. But just to say, I enjoyed a very good weekend in Barcelona. Where
nice.
I actually had a sauna in my room.
What?
And yeah, it was really nice. And it's jumping between the sauna and this amazing, huge rainfall shower. And then what I did is I did fill the little bath thing up with some tepid water.
Amazing.
I had such a good weekend, and I feel like R&R was much needed. I also though broke myself a little bit thinking that I was 21 again or something, and decided to do a spin session, and then I've not been able to walk since, so I'm just carrying on.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I managed to crack 2 ribs on the ski trip, and that was on the last day. Not even skiing, I was just larking around with James Sundin.
Is that because they were just
he just picked me up, and because I'm a weak and feeble man, and he's a giant man, isn't he? He's just snapped me in half basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God! I thought you'd started a fight. I was like, who did you offend?
I'm not going to start a fight with James. I don't know. I could definitely lose that.
Yeah, I mean,
start a fight with someone 3 foot tall. And
Ryan.
that's probably about it. Ryan, yeah, start a fight with Ryan. Oh God, it'd be like some terrible scene out of like an English rom-com, that, wouldn't it?
It would be. Right, should we talk to the people about some of the stuff that happened on your Finance Takes the Piste? Oh, it's not Finance, gosh, Finance Takes the Piste.
Oh, yeah, rebranded post-sale. Yeah.
So we're going to have some interviews that you're going to show on the pod later in this episode. Can you give us a little tidbit on what it's about?
Well, just some excerpts really from some of the conversations that we were having around
experts.
Excerpts. Oh yeah, I like that. That's good. Excerpts from experts. Yeah, conversations that we were having around a couple of things. One was really around skills in the accounting space and what new skills we think might come in to maybe challenge the status quo, and maybe whether that's going to be new skills that individuals bring to the accounting space, or whether that's maybe new skills that we might see from potential competitors that might join the space and try and outcompete bookkeepers and accountants. And we also talked more broadly around kind of, I guess, more around like the function and the makeup of accounting and the bookkeeping firms in terms of trying to move away from just thinking about service delivery, which is what everyone in an accounting firm pretty much does, because they're all accountants and bookkeepers and tax advisors and auditors, etc. And actually thinking about all the operational things that sometimes get forgotten about. So I thought there were some really exciting things there. And I actually, I think one of the things that really stood out for me was Johnny Gaunt was talking about how he empowers some of his teams to take more responsibility for things like the P&L and whether or not they should recruit or pay bonuses to their teams and how they should perform, and within a set of metrics. Did
anyone talk about like the fact that resourcing should be more AI agentic based in your?
Well, I mean, we had Stuart there from formerly of Carbon, now from Archie, and that's an AI powered accounting solution, and there was some talk about sort of how agentic AI is probably going to change the world. And actually, I think on the Digital Digest we're going to start to run a few sessions on that, talking about where the opportunities are, and obviously we're going to talk more about it on the podcast. And I actually was at an event last week, HLB events as it happens, and we were talking about a survey that we've done of businesses across the world and their attitudes to various things. And one of those was talking about AI. And actually the survey results quite interesting, because the previous year, 2023, with all of the chat around ChatGPT and everything, lots of organizations were really excited about the opportunities with AI. That excitement had sort of tailed off a little bit in 2024, I think, because people hadn't really found good solutions. Except what was different was that there was a stark difference between those organizations that had embraced AI and been successful with their experimentations and those that had not been. And so those that had success were much more positive than they were the previous year. Those that had not had success, not too surprising, I guess, were less positive about the impact. But there was talk then about agentic AI and about how we can automate more processes and how that's going to be a real challenge for functional roles which are very much process driven. And of course, ChatGPT just launched their O3 models today as well. So we've seen some interesting things there where they can now do more analysis and probably maybe a competitive response to Deepseek in terms of being able to do more maths-based things and more coding-based things. So it's really fascinating.
For accounting firms in particular, there's several powerful models that are emerging. Deepseek, which is more in the data processing, real-time analytics, offers like a much lower cost alternative for industries like finance, like accounting and security. And it's great for firms that need efficient, cost-effective AI tools for data insights. But then you compare that to something like a ChatGPT by OpenAI. I think that's a good go-to for customer service, content creation, marketing, and some of the chatbots that we've seen. There are other AIs that I think are starting to, that are more intuitive in some cases. Like we've got Claude and Anthropic that could be leveraged by different accounting firms for client communications and document management. And then you've got Google's Gemini, which is designed for more like multitasking and data analysis, which makes it a solid choice for firms managing multiple clients and diverse portfolios. And then on top of that, you've got Perplexity, which excels at being able to recall the most factual information. So if you want to for instance, I've done some queries and searches on like benchmarking of different sort of roles in a different geographic market, how it compares like on a like-for-like basis if you were to recruit the same role with the same cost of living in a different country. So you can really get to know like how how an operation can run cross-border. I love Perplexity for that because it really does the detailed analysis, but then you can't use a Perplexity for something that might be a much more creative play. And for me, that's where you really, ChatGPT excels. Deepseek, I'm just more fascinated by, because I think that the real-time analytics and the fact that you can upload a lot of data is just going to make it a much more disruptive approach to maybe like the fact that, what you were using for ChatGPT, for instance, and you're paying a much more of a premium. I think there's going to be some interesting kind of dynamics at play this next sort of couple of months. And I actually did a head-to-head on one particular task that I asked all of the AIs, and I just wanted to see who came up with the best answer for it. I can honestly, having checked all of them, the one that I loved the most was Gemini, because it came up with a very comprehensive document of how to even configure the types of agents, where you would build it, how you could use them, why it's good in the market, etc. Produce a full, very comprehensive document that you could that you could almost train the AI to also build. So I personally think that it really depends on the different use cases, but I'd encourage everybody to do the same and do a little head-to-head across all of them and see which ones that you think would work for you. But again, I think that's just on AI, and I know that we've already done it to death in the last 10 minutes, so we can pivot onto something else. But I know that, I'm super fascinated about how to build agents and spending a lot more time myself personally, like reading, researching, watching, consuming, and doing a little bit of the playing around that, all of us can do in this day and age. So if anyone else is interested, then we will be sharing maybe a little bit more information on how you can do that.
Absolutely. And I think, I'm an Android user, right? So I've got Gemini on my phone and I barely use it, other than really it's like kind of like just the Google Assistant. So I really need to get into it in a bit more detail. And I think that point where you're talking about comparing models, I know that I've spoken to a few vendors in the market have been launching, language model based features. And they've said exactly what you said, Indy, in terms of like they've gone out into the market and looked at the different models and tested them and come up with a wide range of results, and then trying to nail down which one gives the most consistent and most accurate answers for the particular feature that they're trying to build is really important. And sometimes they've just had to plug in 2 or 3 models and actually draw the best result themselves, or almost put it through a funnel, which I find quite interesting. I must admit, I am really loving what ChatGPT are doing at the moment. I love the O4 model, and the new models in O3 and O1 are actually really, really fascinating, doing some incredible stuff. But let's talk about where AI goes wrong, right? Because unfortunately, Sage launched CoPilot, to a reasonable amount of fanfare after, along with a whole bunch of others last year. And then it's had a little bit of a misbehavior issue. So, it's a young thing. It's only been released in the wild for a little while, but it's already misbehaving, and they've had to suspend Sage CoPilot in the UK. Partly because what was happening was that when you asked Sage CoPilot to show a list of recent invoices and things, the returned information that you got was from other customer accounts, including their own. So it was mixing up the results and giving you other data. And it was subsequently reported. Sage checked it, and then they've decided they've had to pull it. Now, I read a really quite sarcastic report on this, which was quite entertaining, about how Sage has sort of dealt with this in terms of their marketing approach and talking to some of their various supporters and influencers that they pay handsomely to do these things. And I was rather tongue-in-cheek, but I did find it quite interesting. Now, Sage has said that there was no GDPR sensitive data leaked, even though that was a fear. As far as we know, the other models from their competitors have not misbehaved in this way so far, and a little bit challenging. But I guess also Apple have had a similar problem, right? Because they've had to withdraw their news summary AI that was going out because it was misbehaving as well and misreporting the news. So, if Sage get it wrong and Apple get it wrong, then, who knows what might happen with these things.
Teething issues. They're just teething issues. Look, everyone is new to this game, and there's going to be a lot of things that need to be trained into the various systems, and that just takes time. It takes human intervention. Something else, AI, slightly AI related, Vertice, which is a UK-based startup, has raised $50 million in Series C funding to expand its AI-powered platform designed to optimize software and cloud expenditure. The platform has alleged that it cuts purchasing cycles in half, delivering savings of between 20 to 30% by leveraging AI to automate and optimize workflows from price checks to security compliance. So Vertice's technology ingests over $3.4 billion in SaaS and cloud expenditure data, helping businesses make smarter and faster decisions. It's a unique selling point, a large a large software procurement model built to understand software usage patterns and recommend cost-effective solutions. So what does that mean for accountants? I think Vertice offers like a compelling tool that streamlines the software purchases, reduces overheads and cost visibility as software spend continues to surge. Vertice is able to help businesses to keep their costs in check and maximize ROI. I tried to find other platforms that do a similar type of offering to this. I couldn't quite find something that matched it in exactly the same way Vertice has positioned this. When I actually had a look around at like, okay, well, where does it, which category does it sit in? Who do they compete with? And I think that the best that we could see was there were some other platforms that were like in the UK that were referenced, most popular, Coupa, Ramp and Airbase. Airbase provides spend management, including procurement, payments, and accounting automation. Ramp offers a corporate card and spend management platform with AI-driven insights as well. And then Coupa is a business spend management solution, managing transactions across procurement, payment, and supply chain. Have you come across any alternatives, John, that would work in this space and compete with something that Vertice is offering?
Probably not really. I mean, I've seen Ramp before, and there are one or two kind of, I guess, SaaS subscription monitoring tools that you can get, but they're usually connected to a card or something else. So they're more of a payment service really than anything else. So I wonder if this is a new niche. And as someone who's just going through a Microsoft licensing renewal at the moment, I can tell you that anything that helps with that process is a massive game changer because it's horrendous. And I think my concern with some of these products that maybe we've seen before have really just sort of highlighted to an organization that you've got, 20 different subscriptions for SaaS products, and then they kind of try and encourage you to either remove them to reduce costs, or they have some kind of like reverse incentive, where they manage to get discounts when you buy through their card or their payment provider or whatever. Quite often I think what's really more important about SaaS products and apps that you've got, it's like making sure that you're maximizing the benefit of what you've got rather than trying to cut back just because you don't understand why you're spending money on a on a product that does, credit control, for example. Anyway, moving on to a little bit more AI powered news as well. Briefcase and Ruben Steenkamp, who's one of the co-founders from the team there, announced last week that they have released what they've said is their most requested feature yet, and it is AI powered line item extraction. And he's sort of given a few examples in his post that we put on LinkedIn, like I said last week. So it's talking about how sometimes line item splits and analysis on traditional OCR tools doesn't always work because either you've got to manually configure it or it extracts too much information from, say, like restaurant receipts, and you get every dish that everyone's had and all the beers and the wine and everything that people have drunk, and you don't get the big one for me is you don't get the right allocation of VAT rates to the line items necessarily, so things don't add up or it doesn't quite tie together. It always becomes a bit of a mess. But they apparently, and in the demo that they showed, which is a minute and a half long, they've shown how they can automatically pull all of this data, they get the VAT rates correct, they combine similar line items where they don't need to be extracted, and they make sure, like I say, that things like zero rating, reverse charge gets picked up as well, which quite often fails in these products. So I think that's a neat little feature and a real sort of like time saver for any organization that has slightly more complex needs. I think for me, and I've said this to a few people, is like, accounts payable is a process that's hyper optimized, and really what we're doing is like we're nibbling away at the edges of those things that are not quite optimized, and this is one of those key things. But other areas are really challenging to kind of rip up and replace because you're saving maybe someone a second every time they process an invoice. And is that a significant enough gain to convince someone to move from one product to another? I don't know is the honest answer.
I've got some other news that's from industry related as well. iplicit, that we all know and love, a UK-based accounting software provider, secured £25 million in investment from One Peak to accelerate product development and support for its growth. As most people know, iplicit was founded in 2019, and they've achieved triple-digit revenue growth for 6 consecutive years. Won a string of different awards over that time, and this latest funding marks a pivotal moment in its journey, enabling them to expand its presence as a leading cloud accounting solution for the UK mid-market, a market that I think has come under quite a bit of fire recently from a lot of different protagonists who then claim that actually the mid-market is probably being squeezed. iplicit seems to have held its own ground and offers businesses a sophisticated alternative to different outdated on-premise type solutions, as well as advanced functionality into specific areas and categories that businesses operate within. John, can you name me a few categories of industries that they do really well with?
Yeah, charities, not-for-profit is one of the ones that they really do well in. Things like the restaurant, food and beverage type trade as well is another big one for them. So yeah, and any stock holding businesses as well, because they've got a stock module in iplicit. So it's a fairly broad range of sectors they go after.
And it seems that they've got quite a loyal base of customers as well. So they've got 2,000 organizations and 30,000 daily users. So they're poised for a really good breakout year this next year. And they're focused on expanding marketing efforts, building partnerships with resellers. And they've got a really good best-in-class customer support team that they're really banking on to make sure that they mop up in that market. And they also occasionally do some really good Tony's Chocolonely chocolate. So do really want to get yourself some good chocolate and put on the calories moment on the lips, lifetime on the hips, make sure you visit them at the shows.
And we should say they are one of our sponsors, and they are a great team to work with as well, and a good product all around. So yeah, great news. Moving on to the Ryan Piercy segment of the news, which I'm going to pick up, which is the Xero App Store update. I'm not sure if I need to do it in Ryan's voice, but I'll just carry on anyway. And here we go. So we've got a whole bunch of products that have been released, but we'll whiz through these. So we've got Fin Daily, which is a push notification dashboard tool that delivers a daily digest of a company's accounting, banking, and other key data via an automated email. It's only available in the US at the moment, but likely to come into other regions. We've got a global offering from Profit Keeper. This is a product that I have seen in the past, and this is a product that's really great for franchises who are looking to do the reporting that's required and consolidating information across multiple organizations. In particular, what they do is they specialize in analyzing and benchmarking financial performance so that you can really see which, KFC restaurant is outperforming the other ones, and then try and figure out why that's happening. So great little product. You've got a product called Ikigai from Australia, which is an analytics application designed apparently to help accountants and bookkeepers in making informed choices, so that you can pick up problems with age payables and receivables, chase outstanding debts, and keep ahead of upcoming payments. So it sounds like a little bit of a working capital type dashboard. We've got Briefcase, which we just talked about previously on the news. They've finally launched their onto the Xero App Store in the UK, so you can now plug that in rather than going through their beta connection that they had previously. You've got Ship Theory, got to make sure you say that properly, which is a cloud-based shipping management tool used to connect Xero to over 90 international global carriers that deal with all things shipping, and allows you to get your goods out the door, basically. That's available globally. And then a couple more, Store Hub, which is specifically designed for retailers and restaurants looking for a cloud POS, ordering, reporting, and loyalty program, and TaxStar, which is an AI-driven cutting-edge software solution to streamline the processing of managing your corporation tax specifically for the UAE, where, if I remember rightly, and I could get this wrong, but I think they only announced corporation tax in 2024 or possibly the year before, and it's at some sort of crazy rate, like about 15% or something.
Take a breath, John. What I love about that is that you said Ikigai, and it's obviously a new application, but, Iki means alive and Gai means worth. You really need to do what makes you happy and gives you like meaning and purpose. What a great name for a piece of accounting tech.
and I hopefully held up the Ryan Piercy mispronunciation, wooden spoon as well, just in celebration of the fact that he's not here.
Mm-hmm. And our final bit of news this week is from Hedgeflows, a fintech company that specializes in treasury management and simplifying complex international finance processes with automation, making it easier for businesses to handle cross-border transactions. They have secured a broader regulatory approval from the FCA, positioning themselves as a leader in providing innovative financial services for high growth and mid-sized businesses. This milestone allows them to expand their offering with advanced tools aimed at simplifying the complexities of international finance. With the new FCA approval, Hedgeflows can further their mission of supporting businesses in global trade and reduce foreign exchange risk, as well as offer more attractive rates to those businesses who are operating in this space, which actually has been fairly underserviced. So they've managed to kind of do a good job of delivering something that will help optimize the cash flow. And of course, there's like the fact that they've continued to build on different partnerships, different platforms. They think that they have built a very slick operational efficiency into their model. So well done to them. And I guess this will be a really good step in making sure that due process is like followed from their operational standpoint. And hopefully it also means that they can expand the range of financial services that they offer under this.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, I know Alex and Nay, who are the co-founders at Hedgeflows, so huge congratulations to them. This is a big milestone. And yeah, as you said, Indu, they're definitely targeting that, probably the slightly more sophisticated end of the market for anyone that works cross-border, particularly around that treasury management side. And they've got an incredible amount of tools. And yeah, within that team, an incredible amount of knowledge about how to make this work. So they're well worth tapping into and speaking to if you've got clients in that space.
We're joined today by Rob Howard from Accurise, who is an Xledger partner, to learn a little bit more about why he's been working with Xledger. But first, Rob, can you explain to me what Accurise is?
Sure. Accurise, we replace what would otherwise be an internal finance team for our clients. So we're an outsourced service, but we partner really closely with them, and we typically work with larger businesses, providing everything up to what a finance director would do, including financial modeling, cash flow. If you look at Wingstop, our largest client, who are 57 sites, turning over, 150 million a year, just acquired by Sixth Street for 450 million pounds in December. Their total internal finance resource is a CFO, a finance manager who runs the department, a financial controller, and a finance business partner. That's it. We do everything else.
I think this aligns really well with the conversation we had in the last episode with Pete Hucker about how UK accounting firms are now considering doing more outsourcing. Tech has enabled this, and it seems to be growing upwards in scale of business. It used to just be those micro entities. So it'd be really interesting to hear about how and kind of Accurise came about and why Xledger.
So I was, previously to this, I was the managing director of an outsourced hospitality finance business, quite similar to Accurise, that was using some legacy software called Exchequer, which is effectively a database sitting on a server in the corner of the room, with fields of junior staff doing everything in Excel, which was clearly, it wasn't fit for 2010, never mind the 2020s. So I wanted to change all that, and I had a look at all of the offerings out there. There's loads of the sort of smaller offerings, which are fine for small businesses, but my drive has always been to work with larger businesses. So that took us to the mid-market, and I looked at kind of all your standard players, your SAP, NetSuite, Sage Intacct, everything else like that. And I found a mate of mine who was at Smith & Williamson and said, have I missed anything? Is that just the sum total of the market in the UK? And he said, I've heard about this software, Xledger. It's quite new to the UK, but it's big in the Nordics. You should speak to them. So I phoned them up, and like I say, there was, I think, probably 8 people employed by them in the UK at the time. And I phoned them up and said, hi, I'm the managing director of an outsourced finance team looking to change our whole software. I've been told you guys are good. We've got about 50 people employed here. We've got all these clients. Can I speak to somebody? And the chap I was speaking to on the phone said his name was Tim, and he said, he seemed quite keen. And he said, yeah, I'll come up and see you at your offices. So he came to see me the next week, and I went down, and they said, Tim's here. And I sat in the room, and it turned out it was my mate Tim from the local pub, who I knew worked in some sort of tech, but had no idea he was the sales director for Xledger in the UK. I said, did you know it was me? He said, yeah, I did know it was you, but I was wondering if you knew it was me or not.
At least I really hope that from there you went to the pub to continue the conversation, because that's where you used to be in.
I think we actually had our final discussions on the contract that they offered us in the pub over a pint, actually.
It's the best way.
It's where all good business is done.
Yeah. But you went through, and obviously you decided on Xledger, but what was it about the system? What were the specifics back then that made you think this is the system that will power the business as it grows? So
there's 2 parts to that, I guess. One part is, are you going to move away from the small systems with like the app ecosphere into a more kind of complete system that does everything? And it was clear I always wanted to have a system that did everything rather than be bolting on bits. And then how true it is, I don't know, but I'm always concerned that something's going to break, and both of these companies are going to be saying it's the other company's fault. I like to have everything with one company, so whichever bit's broken, it's definitely their fault. I just prefer that in general. But very specifically for us, there was a few things. One was that if I looked at where Xledger's revenue came from worldwide, about 80% of it came from partners delivering services like I wanted to do. So I knew that all of the development pressure for the last 20 years on Xledger had been, how can you empower a partner to work with a client, rather than how can we make this product better for an internal finance team that you can then possibly find a way to work with your clients? Because particularly in hospitality, where you've got all of these restaurants spread out everywhere, but we never want to have our team sitting in our clients' offices because they're then tied to that space. I need to be able to offer somebody 20% of the time for this client, 30% here, and be able to move people around. So they have to be sitting with me. So that ability to work remotely and really tailor and configure the access that everybody has. An FD for one of our clients needs to be able to see everything, but I absolutely do not want the FD to be able to post anything, because there needs to be a really clear line. If something's wrong, it's our fault, right? I can't be going, and there are other concerns as well. We have a reputation to uphold, and all of a sudden, we all saw what happened to Patisserie Valerie, where, So it needs to be our responsibility to do the posting, and Xledger gives us the ability to do that. It has a hierarchical structure, which I didn't see from anywhere else, which means that we have a very top level, which is Accurise domain, and then underneath that we might have Accurise hospitality, and then underneath that we might have Pharma J holding and Wingstop holding and Yoke holding, and then underneath that you've got the legal entities. And whenever I make configuration changes at a level, it flows down automatically to everything else underneath it. So if I set a base chart of accounts, which I want across all of my clients, or if I want to change the way something in the system works, I do it once, and then everything I set up underneath that will inherit all of those changes. So that saves me a load of time on setup. It also means then that the information consolidates upwards live and in real time. So everyone says, oh yeah, we'll consolidate, but really it's a process. You finish your accounts for each company and then you run a process and it gives you your consolidated accounts. Whereas in Xledger, particularly in hospitality, you will have lots of SPVs holding the leases for each of the individual sites. Sometimes we have clients where each individual site they have, and they might have 10 of them, is sitting in its own legal entity doing the trade for that individual company. So in a less full-featured system, you're constantly hopping from one to another and you can't see everything that's going on. Whereas in Xledger, you can be at that holding level and you're literally seeing it live, and not just your reporting. If I send a multi-entity client a payment run, they're going to see all of the invoices that we've suggested be paid across all of their different entities. And if they want to filter it by company, they can, but they could also filter by supplier. So they can see how much that we're intending to pay the fruit and veg supplier across all 10 entities on this payment run, because their relationship will be one-to-one, even if it's all these individual companies. And we can do things like, in that situation, well, we might owe them 500 quid over here on this entity, but the supplier owes 800 quid to us on a different entity where we're expecting the money back. So that allows us to then say, well, we're not going to pay you the 500 quid because you still owe us 800 quid over here. So there's lots of little things, as well as this idea of some consolidated reporting. The specifics of how it works really helps us do our jobs.
Yeah, I think what also the benefit of that structure means that, I know you've got that focus on hospitality, but if you move into professional services, you could have that sector that is a level. Yeah. So if you want to change something in a sector, it only affects that sector and not every other entity.
And even the levels underneath that. Professional services is a big sector. So you might have professional services where you make changes for professional services as a whole. But then if we do recruitment consultants, recruitment agents, then those can have their own holding level underneath that, which will just affect the ones under that.
Yeah, and as outsourcing becomes a more prominent part of a lot of accountants' revenue stream, I think this is something that's become more and more painful for them as they're, as you say, working across multiple different logins as such, for clients. So look, Rob, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much. I think we've learned a lot. And if you're ever going to check out software, make sure that it's not your mate that's the one that's going to be selling it to you.
Yeah, there's something to that. Thanks very much. It's been fun.
So before this gets poo-pooed, it's not necessarily the 40 that's the key. It's more about the principle of it. So I think this is used in a lot of sectors, in particular tech. But there's a question about what's the right EBITDA for an accountancy firm. I'm not big on benchmarks. I think you need to play by your own game on whatever's right for you. But one way of looking at it is the higher your growth rate is, the lower profit margin you might accept. Because if you're growing fast as a business, you're more likely to accept you're going to invest in the business, and it's hard to maintain the same profit margins if you're growing like mad. Whereas if you've maybe plateaued a little bit, you're focusing more on margin and less on growth rate, then that's how that rule sort of works. But for you might be happy with a rule of 30, or you might be unhappy and want a rule of 50. But it's basically to say, if, for example, you're growing at 15% year on year, you might accept a profit margin of 25%. So 25 and 15 equals 40. So that's how it works, really. I was trying to make it 1 minute.
Okay, so I'll bring kind of maybe a different slant to this from the private equity world. Why is growth, both top line and EBITDA, important? Well, quite bluntly, they are the things that drive valuation. So the better quality your revenue, the better valuation you're going to, better multiple you're going to get, and your bigger EBITDA, the bigger the number is going to be from a valuation perspective. But if you look at the history of our business, and we've not actually touched on this yet, we did a huge amount of M&A, particularly in the UK. Now, that wasn't M&A for M&A's sake. That was M&A to give us scale, to give us organisational resilience. Because once you've got scale, you can then start engineering the processes, engineering the teams, engineering how you deliver the services, and you've got the operational bandwidth to make some wrong decisions. And if you're starting at 100, and that 100 is a, multi-million pound number, as you can afford to fall to 80 and have that resilience in the organisation because you've got more oil in the machine. It's cash that ultimately keeps you afloat, not profit and not revenue. So once you've got more cash swilling about, you've got that organisational bandwidth to invest, to make the mistakes, to learn, not make mistakes next time, and then ultimately drive the bottom line margin. So don't overlook the idea of M&A or some form of acquisitive activity to give you more organisational resilience, which then also gives you the bandwidth financially and from a resource perspective to engineer your EBITDA and go for that growth as well. So,
Paul, you spoke about this, didn't you? Do you want to just quickly back to Paul? Catch.
So the question was, do we use timesheets? And I think a lot of people would see that we're quite a modern firm, probably don't do timesheets. We do, but we don't do it to price direct billing, but we do it to inform our prices. So we don't get to the end of the month and say, this client we've spent X number of hours and therefore they need to pay X, but we do use it to inform, have we got our overall rate card effectively right? So we're always, we built our pricing engine like 12 years ago, which later became GoProposal. But we still, every week, we're tinkering with our prices because we use the information from the timesheets and from feedback from team and everything else to say, okay, we're now going to put this unit price up by 3%, and then there's no negotiation from the team or from clients or from prospects about what price they pay. We can change the price in the engine, but then we can't then change it from client to client just because we think it's too much or too little. So the price is the price, but it's always changing, if that makes sense.
There's been so many amazing things said. This is a fascinating topic, and I think we could just carry on for hours on it. To that particular point, I think the answer is yes. I think the firms of tomorrow will have lots of accountants in and lots of not accountants in. Even I mean, I'm talking about the accounting firms of tomorrow. Accounting is a vocational qualification, right? And we talk about accounting businesses as if they're basically full of accountants, which in many cases they are. And that's part of the challenge that they'll face, in this next wave of kind of innovation activity, I think. In the same way that if you had a web design agency that was just full of web developers, they'd be really good at web developing. But they wouldn't necessarily be good at any of the soft skills that we've been talking about: communication, relationships, empathy. They're unlikely to sell anything more than coding. And that's a problem if disruption comes along and does the coding automatically. Like, that becomes a bit of a problem. This is hard to change in big firms. I think really because of this, and this might be one of the skills to look for, or one of the mindsets to cultivate, is that big firms don't have agility. And that means, and this is the sort of classic innovator's dilemma thing, like having processed the shit out of it, then it becomes quite hard to change that process. And you lose a little bit of meaning because the new person comes in and they say, well, here's the 17 steps. And they're like, well, but why, and what's it for, and what does it actually mean out in the real world? And you kind of lose that, and you do that for 3 or 4 years, then that's probably not a great experience. So it's hard in larger firms. I don't think it's easy to do. I'm reminded of like Elon Musk's point about, he's really big on like ripping out the process and putting it back exactly how it should be. And he's got this comment of, if you're not putting 10% of the steps back in, then you didn't take enough out when you were trying to simplify things. Like, you've got to rip it out and go, oh shit, now we actually need that step. So that requires agility, it requires courage, and those things. It's big firms have inertia, right? So they can move, but they move slowly. Small firms don't have inertia; they move really, really fast. So they can be agile from day one. Something we talked about in prep yesterday. Like, we look for business skills. You know, we have accountants in our. I mean, like our 2 client managers, for example. One of them is a really good accountant, ACA qualified, very, very good. The other one's AAT level 3, 4, something like that. I'm a little bit better on the balance sheet than she is, I think. But she ran a bar in Spain for 6 years. So she is shit hot with clients. She's very, very good at asking the provocative question about their marketing or their staff, or showing the empathy when something's gone wrong or there's a problem. You know, that's what our small business owner clients want. Thank you very much. You know, so you know, that's a huge draw for us. Like if we see those skills, we'll hire for it. And then, I mean, there's so many comments I've got down here. John, if you want some more skills point, I think, you know, agility is important. I think relationships is important. Empathy is hugely important. You know Simon Sinek's what, how, why. So let's just run through that quickly because I think it's quite useful. What, the outside of the ring, like in that is VAT returns, payroll, all the way up to audits. And guess what? It's commoditized. There is one way to do a VAT return, the right way. There are many ways to have a VAT return done to you or done for you. Okay. In the middle zone, the how, this is like any firm's secret sauce. Oh, we use this particular tech, or we use AI, or we've got this amazing process, or we do it like this. We outsource it so we can do it cheaper. That's all the how. The why, which is Simon Sinek's like start with that. It's actually really hard to start with that, but definitely end up there. Why are we doing any of this? Like in our practice, we exist to help our clients grow. It's as simple as that. The fact that we do accounting is just because it's a really good commercial model. You know, you have to buy it. And if you do it in a certain way, you pay for it every month. But, you know, you could swap that out for something else. Our why is to help our clients grow. So we should focus on why, and we want to look for people. When a new hire comes into our practice, that's what I tell them. Like, we're here to help our clients grow. Like, that's what we're trying to do here. Oh, by the way, the VAT return's due.
Point here, going back to Alistair's, we as a profession try too hard to find solutions. So I want to challenge the question a little bit, because maybe we're doing that here in terms of trying too hard. Perhaps we don't need something new. We need to focus on utilising what we have already better. And I think this is something from an accounting perspective, be it software or other things like that. There's a lot of skill sets we've touched upon that we do already have, but we could utilise better without seeking something new. I speak so much about coaching. It's not something new. I totally get that. But I want to talk about some things we've done in our office, which has helped massively with the aspects we've discussed. So the first thing is we're very vocal about our 360 approach. And we do see it in this order. We want to make our lives better. We want to make our clients' lives better. We want to make the world a better place. So I'm very vocal about the whole your oxen mask first. If we're not making our lives better, that's not to the detriment of others. How can we possibly serve all those other people around us? In terms of clients, again, we weren't making clients' lives better. Well, then we wouldn't make our lives better. So again, we've got to make a difference there. And obviously make the world a better place. Again, it's about so much as important to us. But unless we do those other two bits, we cannot do that. So we see it, but then what do we do about it? Well, we've got impact walls. So our impact walls in the office demonstrates the impact we're making across those 3 areas. So it's visual, it's tracked, it's spoken about all of the time. But you might think, right, okay, how is this structured? And coming back to the question from a skill sets perspective, people have heard where I've spoke about our 3 broad questions we ask clients, potential clients. What does success look like to you personally 12 months from now? What does success look like to you in business 12 months from now? What would you consider this relationship, accountant and business owner, a success 12 months from now? And how are you going to measure the impact? We do the same with the team and the potential team. So we'll ask the team, what would you consider success in your personal life 12 months from now? What do you consider success in the business 12 months from now? What would you consider this relationship, you and I, a success in 12 months' time? And how do you measure the impact? So and I know it sounds like a generic, easy thing to say, just ask better questions. But I want to push a question back to the wider room. And there's been several points this has been said, but we maybe haven't specifically said it. Is a lot of the skill sets we're looking for already right in front of us? They just need to be better used or better applied to to address the issues we're speaking of. Because I think that approach there, come back to your mindset question, is about challenging the norm, challenging what society leads us to believe what we must do. Go against that. Go to like what we're doing here in terms of this. January is, say, some of the posts have been there. That's what we're doing, challenging the norm. So if we can address that and look for simplicity rather than complexity, there might just be a lot of those skill sets we can overcome within what we've already got. So there's a lot in there, so apologies. But
that's great. It was a great example around right people and the right carrot to drive this.
So we use this concept of a labour efficiency ratio, which is basic staff costs over gross profit, and again, it's trying to drive the right behaviours. And so we set an upper limit and a lower limit. The idea is that as you incentivise the team to bring more kind of revenue in, make sure we recharge software costs, etc. So that's why it's gross profit. When we hit that upper limit, there's a couple of choices that we expect the team to make. It's either, do you want to give pay rises out amongst yourselves, or do you need to create capacity? And so it answers that real question of what's in it for me or what's in it for them, because I think there's always this tendency of, yeah, we should be charging more, yes, we should be making more profit, but for them it's almost like that bit of going, why bother? So we've seen it being quite really successful in terms of, you get to that point, you're hitting the upper limit, right team, do you want to get paid more, and therefore you reset it and then we go again, or do you want to hire someone? And we've seen that we've kind of created the capacity for 2 extra people. So we managed a number of people out for underperformance, and then it's that bit of, right, shit, what do we do? And the team are like, we got this. And it's the bit of making sure you charge properly, but it's also then the whole kind of bit of what can I do to be more efficient? And where we want to get to is we want to get to a results-only work environment. So the concept, you get 2 different types of stars in your business. You get rock stars and you get superstars. Your superstars are the ones who want to progress. And I think we've had a conversation on a chair list about it, of almost like, yes, you want people who want to progress, but equally you get rock stars, and these are just people who are absolute machines at what they do, but they don't want to progress, but ultimately they want to get more time. So why are we making them work 9 to 5? Or they want to earn more money. So therefore, why don't we pay them more? And so that's a kind of a big driver in FD Works, and a big driver behind Socket is almost this bit of actually, how do we get to results only work environment? And therefore it's almost that bit of, I don't believe you need people who are, I don't think you need to give them shares, because actually for a lot of people, they just want cash or they want time back. And so that's the big driver here.
Well, there we go. That's the end of another Digi-Tools and Accrual World podcast. We're delighted, as always, that you took the time to listen to the news, the updates, interviews, etc. Of course, as ever, we're always interested in your feedback. So give us a shout on LinkedIn, rate us, review us, etc. on all of the various platforms. And if there's anything that you want us to talk about, or if you want us to stop talking about AI, just give us a shout and tell us, because we're always listening to what our audience wants. Make sure that you keep a lookout for any of the details in the show notes. And of course, the Digital Disruptors will continue to do everything that we can to expand the knowledge and information that's out there in the marketplace for everyone to share.
We will catch